Hi, everybody. Welcome into the Irish NFL show. It is Monday night. Delighted to be joined by Colin, Mark, Brian, and myself. That shows you how awake I am after last night. How are we getting on, boys? The Irish NFL show is presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. £20, €20 welcome offer is money back as cash if your first bet loses. The promo code is Irish NFL show, and the T's and C's are all below 18 plus. Please gamble aware. How are we all doing?
Fantastic. What a week 18. Just a reminder, if one was needed, of why we love this game. The thrills, the spills, the always expect the unexpected. And last night was just fantastic.
When the league finally got their way and got this week 18, there was a lot of people that were opposed to it, and they said the risk and health and safety to the players. I don't think anybody haven't taken their time out yesterday, whether they're in the States or whether this side of the world, to watch 7 hours of complete and absolute madness. I can't recall a weekend like it. I really can't. I know there wasn't that many permutations. Well, we didn't think there was, but the way it played out last night, and it was capped off with arguably the best Sunday night football game of the season.
JFK being assassinated, 9/11, Princess Diana. There are certain moments you remember where you were at that moment in time. Week 18 of the 2021 NFL season might quite go up there. Literally, Scarlett Johansson could have been naked in front of me yesterday, and I'd have told her to get the hell out of the way of the TV. It was drama. It was classic. It was unreal. I mean, I don't know, where do you start? What do we talk about? There's just so much to talk about.
There's so much to talk about. There is. And I think we're going to start AFC, then NFC, and then coach hirings, firings. If you want to get a comment or question in tonight, folks, please do so. YouTube, search Irish NFL Show. That's the best bet. Also, Facebook. We're on our Facebook page, Irish NFL Show, and also NFL Ireland's Facebook page. Very quickly, just a very quick look ahead to the weekend. Raiders, Bengals, Patriots, Bills, Eagles, Bucks, 49ers, Cowboys, Steelers, Chiefs, and Cardinals, Rams. We'll talk about the permutations. We'll talk about how we got there. Welcome into Owen Niner Nation. And Neil, you're fully right. The frills, the spills, the quarterback sneaks. And I was going to save this until the end of the show, but Brian, we all have the same amount of touchdowns as Kenny Golladay this year. Not just you, so I'm not singling you out, but we'll try and we talk about the Giants in at some point as well, hopefully towards the end of the show. Who knows?
There wasn't a quarterback sneak, though. Anybody who watches American football knows the play call was a victory formation play, not a quarterback sneak.
Have you been preparing that all day? Have you been rehearsing that all day?
I knew what was happening at the time. I don't really want to think that's what we should be starting the show with. In fairness, I think that's for the dribble at the end. This is the bigger thing we're talking about than victory formations on a 3rd and 9, with 4 minutes to go in the second quarter.
Excuse me, absolutely. And obviously welcome into everybody. We're also presented by Trust Gaming. Let's get underway. I couldn't believe what happened last night in Jacksonville. It's funny because Jacksonville have 3 wins this year. Am I right? The game in London that we were at, the game against the Bills, and now the game against the Colts. Stunning upset. And Colin, the Colts are out. The Colts had it all to play for. Jonathan Taylor, MVP. I don't want to hear a word of it now, because that was atrocious.
Well, you won't hear a word of it, Michael. It's done. It's over.
But it was awful. He was so bad.
Well, it's hardly on him. Where do you want to begin? The entire from the entire Colts organization needs to look at itself in the mirror. Frank Reich won't be sacked, shouldn't be sacked, but I think you can genuinely say the Colts have gone in the last 2 weeks from 7 Pro Bowlers, which is the most in the league. You're looking at Jonathan Taylor, talked about as an MVP. I thought up to that point he was brilliant. A defensive player of the year talked about, to ending the season feeling about as bad as I think anyone else in the league. I mean, yesterday wasn't just bad. It wasn't a fluke. They were beaten up. They were beaten up on both sides of the ball. Jonathan Taylor at 77 yards. He was stopped twice on 4th down. And not just stopped. I mean, he was stomped. But ultimately, like this, the history was there. We talked about it. They had lost 6 road games. It's now 7. Everyone else in that period. I think has just winning records over the Jags, but not the Colts. And then ultimately you look at the Carson Wentz trade. So the Colts got Carson Wentz, the Eagles got a top 20 pick, a third round pick, 103 million in cap relief, and the Eagles are in the playoffs and the Colts are not. So Howie certainly came up smelling of roses in that one. They might forgive him for Jalen Reagor now. No, they won't. But certainly after that, I think the Eagles will be very happy. I mean, I've been watching football 35 years, and it was the biggest meltdown by an individual player for not Peterman at the Bills. This was like a guy who we know can play, but you just watched him and you just saw the cogs turning in his head saying, I shouldn't throw this. No, I won't. And then he did. And then you could see him go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It was horrific from top to bottom. There is nobody from the Colts who will come out of that. It's just a disaster.
Brian, is Carson Wentz finished in Indianapolis?
Well, I think the difficulty they have is there, as Colin has rightly called out in terms of the trade value last March when the deal was made. Like, there's so much gone into that deal. Where did it go? Because they've given up quite a lot to get him. Obviously, there was permutations within the, clause within that particular trade in terms of if he played or whether they made the playoffs. But they're giving up a force, to giving up a third, to walk away from him now. I'm sure there's a lot of Colts fans today that would be frustrated and say, yeah, we should walk away from him because, but in fairness to us, we've been talking about it over the past few weeks how poorly he's played. And it just dates back to, I'd say, the second half of the game against the Patriots on that Saturday night. He wasn't very effective in that game. And he was masked by Jonathan Taylor. He didn't play too well in Arizona. And last week he struggled again. And yesterday, for an offensive line that was really good against the Patriots a few weeks ago, they need to take 11 of the blame because he was beat up yesterday, 6 sacks. I know there's 2 turnovers, which were really poor. And one of them, a lot of people felt today was actually, should have been an incomplete pass and not a fumble, but it is what it is. Look, it's their worst performance offensively since November 2019, and what a time to have it. In a game that yesterday we all felt they'd win, but we did call out little components or little nuggets of information that we felt may help the Jags, which was nothing to play for. They've had the course on them for the last few years, and Wentz hadn't been playing well. And if they could hold Taylor, which the Raiders did quite well last week for large parts of the game, if they could hold Taylor down, you're relying on Wentz to win the game, and we know that's a question mark and has been for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, was it Rich Eisen came out with the line of the weekend on the Colts? He said in 2 weeks they've gone from being the team no one wanted to face in the playoffs to not in the playoffs. And Jonathan Taylor might, reconcile himself and go to bed at night with the rushing title by a massive 552 yards, but he's the first rushing leader since Mojo back in 2011 not to be going to the playoffs. And Wentz, I mean, where do you start? I mean, seriously, we have been calling out for several weeks. Look at the lines; they're not very, dramatic. Do you trust Carson Wentz? No, nobody trusts Carson Wentz. But he's had 8 games. I think I tweeted out yesterday. 8 games below 200 yards. He only had 2 with more than 300 yard passing. He has not been it's not even been that he's not been leading them to games. There's 1 or 2. Christmas Day probably was one of his highlights in relation to it. But it's been the fact that he hasn't even been that consistent player. They've been looking for a Jimmy Garoppolo type player. Who was it that led the Ravens in 2000? God, name escapes me at the moment now.
Quarterback, Trent Dilfer.
Yeah,
I was doing 11+ mark, so I wouldn't.
Trent Dilfer.
Yes, thank you. Trent Dilfer. That's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking, don't turn the ball over, be consistent, make throws on third down when you need to. He hasn't been able to perform in that regard. And I don't know, guys. I mean, I'll be honest. It was fantastic that it happened in so many ways because that unleashed the carnage and the chaos that was then to follow. I mean, Brian, you're right. We did call out a couple of things about the Jags, but let's be fair. We all picked the Colts. We all kind of assumed that one's addressed. I think I laughed off the idea that the Steelers and the Ravens still had a playoff shout a couple of weeks ago because it seemed like such a long shot. And ultimately, if you're a Colts fan, you're looking at this going, how did we do this? They've gone from beating the Patriots and kind of looking, it's like still there was options, still maybe they could make the Titans nervous, to losing at home to the Raiders and then losing away to the Jags. Either one would have done. It wasn't just this week, it was last week as well. So, sorry to Colts fans out there, but my God, did it set up the fun to follow. How's the maths, guys? How was the calculations and all the permutations flying at that point in time?
What I think the other thing, just to give the Jags some credit, like this was probably Trevor Lawrence's best performance of the entire season. This, potentially his coming of age game in the league. He really looked in control, and to compare and contrast him with Wentz was night and day. And the Jags, in fairness, I thought Gotsis had a great game. Josh Allen, came up big when needs be with 2 sacks. So you'd have to say this is a Jags team who they are, statistically the worst. They will pick number 1. But they have at times this season, they have surprised teams because this was, as I said, their best performance. But in their wins over the Bills, they absolutely shut down that Bills offense. Now, they didn't do much themselves, but they shut down the Bills offense. So they are a strange team, and this was, half the fans showed up in clown costumes, but it was ultimately the Colts. So I don't know if the team bus was a clown car for the Colts going back to Indianapolis, and they all got out at Lucas Oil, and just a day to forget for the Colts.
Can I just make one quick observation here? I think, especially with the year that's in it that we lost John Madden, you can't help but think back to John Madden's famous voicemail to Tom Coughlin, the New York Giants, back in 2007, when they played to win, when they played all their starters in Week 17 against the Patriots. And he left this great voicemail about, what you've done is one of the best things for the NFL in a long time. You should always play to win the game. Fair play to you all is the basic tenet. Yesterday, it wasn't just the Jags. It was the Lions who had an opportunity basically to get the number 1 pick and still played hard and still finished out against Green Bay. Literally, they were the Jags are up by miles. We could stop playing now. And Campbell's gone drilled. They're going to play hard. The Texans terrified the living bejesus out of the Titans at one point, that it looked like they were going to throw it away. The Jets played the Bills hard. And then, of course, the Raiders and the Chargers, when there was every opportunity, and we'll come to it, I know, to stop playing, they continued and they went for it. I mean, that was one of the most positive things. After the debacle of Sunday Night Football last year with that Phillies and Washington game, wasn't it just great to see so many teams put everything in it till the last possible moment?
Yeah, Scott Hansen kept repeating the fact in the last quarter, and when they were jumping from the Lions game back to Jacksonville and Texans game around permutation around draft picks, at that moment in time, with the pure excitement that's going on and the intensity of those games, nobody is concerned about where they're picking in the draft come April. Dan Campbell on the sideline is probably thinking, I'll get more out of this win against the Packers from my team going forward as dropping the game and taking their one pick. There's 3 or 4 edge rushers coming out. Whatever one you get in the first 5, he'll be happy with. So he kept coming back to it all the time. And I was like, just forget about it. These games are great. Like you said, these teams are playing to win. Didn't matter what the outcome of their season was.
Feeling a bit emotional tonight about Scott, and want to thank Scott for everything he's done for us over the last 18 Sundays. It's going to be a hard few months. Trevor Lawrence, 23 of 32, 223 yards, 2 touchdowns. Adam Gotsis, 6 sacks. Do you know what? I wasn't going to say it, and I think I'm going to get people riled up tonight on a few things. The Colts didn't show up. I think the Colts been in there thinking, it's be a piece of piss. Genuinely. I understand the Jaguars played very well, but I think they had an arrogance about them, thinking they'd walk that game, and they were completely played off the park.
I don't think you can argue with that, Michael. I think it's a very valid point. There's a certain bit of complacency. There's a certain bit of complacency that's got into the game. Don't think that's the ultimate reason as to why they lost, but they never got it going. I put it more down to the quarterback struggles than complacency. But yeah, it's valid. It's a valid point as well.
Alrighty, we've a lot to get through because I think the Sunday Night Football one will take us an hour to talk about. But let's talk about the Steelers against the Ravens. Big Ben is still alive for at least another week. I can't wait to hear your picks ahead of that on Sunday, boys. Oh my god!
Come on.
Fair play to the Steelers. The Steelers get the win over the Ravens, and Colin, Big Ben lives to fight another day. But for a neutral, watching that game, it was enthralling.
Well, I said it would be a slugfest, and that's exactly what it was. Because when you have Pittsburgh up against Baltimore, you have two teams that don't particularly like one another, and you've got defenses that are going to show up big time. For Ben, in 18 seasons, he's never finished below 500. Which is quite phenomenal, obviously. And TJ Watt gets the sack to equal the official record. Now, will he get another half a sack off of Huntley? Maybe he will. But obviously, the NFL only started officially recognizing sacks in 82. And you had Detroit's Al Baker, who recorded 23 sacks in his rookie year in 78. He was actually rooting for Watt to get there. And if Watt gets another half a sack off Huntley, maybe he will. But for me, look, this highlights, Mike Tomlin is magic. He got the Steelers, I think, through sheer force of personality. He willed them to the playoffs because, there's a lot of talk about Peyton Manning being a shadow of his former self, but this is the same with Ben. And Najee Harris, I think 381 touches I saw that he had, and he didn't fumble at all during the season. So quite the rookie campaign. He didn't have the big breakout games maybe that people were expecting at times, but you'd have to say really important piece of the Steelers making it to the playoffs. And let's look for them. They got there. I think they'll worry about the Chiefs next week.
Yeah, a game that only took place 3 or 4 weeks ago in Arrowhead, where they were blown out 36-10. And I think that was kind on that game, because I think even Mahomes and the guys took players out early in the second half. Look, Colin, you touched on Mike Tomlin. They finished the season 9-7, and that draw obviously against the Lions, and for games where we saw they were so restrictive on offense and so conservative at time because how Big Ben, it was evident he was struggling for them to be where they are. Again, it shows the manner of the head coach is. On the Ravens side, myself and Mark touched on 6 losses in a row to finish off the season, and that'll get glossed over because the head coach, and obviously there was a few games they could have won if they had went into overtime. But I think Lamar Jackson will probably be the one coming out of this, better off, because financially he might be better off with that contract, because it's clear that this team revolves around him, and what's Huntley is a good backup. I don't think he's at the level Lamar Jackson is, and they'll obviously have him back next season, which would be a plus for them, and they'll be back again playing. But yeah, it was a bit weird because it got to a stage where, is anybody going to win this game? Are we actually going to have a draw and eliminate them both? But very, very unusual game.
Jesus, where to go? TJ Watt, he got the sack record, let's remember, in 15 games, not 16, because he missed 2 games. So he's actually did it better than Michael Strahan. And I'm delighted you brought that up, Stephen. I brought that up a few times in the last few weeks. It is a fake record. TJ Watt's the real holder, because Brett Favre even admitted afterwards he gave that to Michael Strahan. So I hope TJ Watt gets the extra half sack and we can remove Michael Strahan's fake record from the history books forevermore. That being said, it wasn't just that. The drama, the intrigue. I mean, 2 of the biggest rivals of all time going toe-to-toe. The 4th and 8 from the Baltimore 41. Ben is about as mobile as, I don't know, a guy being whacked by the mob standing in his feet of cement at the moment. And let's face it, that Pittsburgh offensive line wants to get everyone in the backfield killed at various times. Colin mentioned, Najee Harris hasn't necessarily had breakout games. When's he had a chance to? Even again, this Baltimore game, and obviously Baltimore have a decent defense, albeit that they're suiting up anyone they find off the street in the secondary. He was 10 rushes for 13 yards prior to his very, very last rush, which was for 15 yards to break that last bit equally open. So it wasn't a 51-yarder for Boswell. It was a 36-yarder. So he knew when to break it out at the right time at his best rush of the game. But frankly, you couldn't write it better. Like any given Sunday, Friday Night Lights, try writing the drama like that. The Colts game going that way, the two old timers kind of like the two old rivals fighting it off, and Big Ben there, I don't know, like old Methuselah, try and fight to the last. One of my favorite lines by Dylan Thomas: "Do not go quietly into the light. Rage against the dying of the light." He's trying that every which way. The last thing, just on the Ravens, there's a couple of teams whose season was just derailed by the most important injury to the most important player, and that is the quarterback. You can argue the Dolphins' season was derailed in week 2. 2 are missing 3 games then, and that put them on the wrong track at the wrong time of the season. And of course, Baltimore, as Brian just said, 6 losses in a row. Just one of them goes the other way. Do Ravens fans anguish over those 2-point conversions? Yes, I'm pretty sure they will for most of the offseason. But more importantly, if Lamar Jackson hadn't missed the last 4 games of the seasons, it could have gone a different way. Credit to whichever Harbaugh it is, John Harbaugh, for keeping their season somewhat on track, given the amount of injuries they suffered during the year. But it wasn't to be. And the Steelers somehow, some way, despite multiple heart attacks we'll come to about the tie scenario, go through. Just what drama, what a game.
Harbaugh in Baltimore since 2008. It's the first time the Baltimore Ravens have finished 4th in the AFC North. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. Obviously had a lot of things going on there this year, and an interesting year in that division. I think we can all agree that Ben Roethlisberger is nowhere near the player that he was. He's not. He's a shadow of himself. But he still put up 244 yards yesterday, albeit one interception, 1 touchdown, 30 of 44. Look, if I've learned anything yesterday, and I'm not just talking about this game, I'm talking about everything, it's not over till it's over. It's not. The man looks like he's found, like he's on the rip, and he's found a bag of cans, and he's still going at 6 a.m. He's finding a way. He's going to keep going. I can't wait for this game at the weekend. Seriously, I don't know what it is. If it's Najee Harris or TJ Watt or whoever, I just, maybe the Chiefs will blow them out. But if they blow them out, they blow them out. But I just got some spidey sense inside of me, folks, is thinking, is this Ben Roethlisberger's last game? I don't know what it is, but Jesus, fair play to the Steelers yesterday for getting that over the line, because those short passes, yeah, they might not be that productive, but they work for the Steelers. So fair play to Big Ben getting it done. Peyton Manning-esque 2015.
Will.i.am apparently came up. Mike Tomlin apparently came up to him in the locker room and only had a brief moment with him, but did say, what was it Peter King reported? He said, "I'm not done with you yet, big boy," was the line he gave to Roethlisberger. Yeah, that sums up a lot in a very short point. So we look forward to the game.
Will.i.am wishes he would half as successful as Mike Tomlin. The other thing on this is just in a season where we've seen quarterbacks get more protection than ever before, and some of the roughing the passer calls have been quite extraordinary. The hit that took Lamar Jackson out of the season. Hi Roger Goodell, you might want to look at some of your rules, because ultimately on the biggest stage you missed out on one of your biggest stars being able to play.
Okay, I like it. Steelers are going to Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football. Yeah. Al Michaels' penultimate game, arguably or potentially, of his career. Michelle Tafoya also leaving NBC at the end of the season. There's your fun fact of the week from Mike. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Sunday Night Football. I don't like either of these teams as a Broncos fan, as an AFC West fan, but as a football fan, I didn't think I would feel like this. But whenever the Raiders done it and won the game, I was livid. I don't know why. I really don't know. I can understand why they done it, but for a good portion of this morning, I was fuming. I thought the tie would have been hilarious. It would have been a bit of crack, but my God, what was Rory McIlroy doing, Colin? Sorry, what was Steely doing as just in regards to that timeout? He looks a bit like Rory McIlroy. He does.
Yeah, a little bit, and maybe Rory would have made better decisions. I'm the opposite, Michael. I'm so glad that it didn't end in a tie. I genuinely think that fans of the other 30 franchises would have been entitled to burn both franchises to the ground if they had played out a tie. As Mark has called out, playing hard in the last week of the season is what we want to see. And in fairness, it was the best Sunday night game probably since the one of the best games since the Chiefs Rams from 2018. So it was just fantastic, and kudos to Derek Carr. I've given him plenty of grief on this, but he led his team, and for him it'll be the first chance to play in the postseason. Obviously the Raiders got there, but he'd broken his leg the last time, so it's good for him. In fairness, he has dragged a team. And their interim head coach, first time an interim head coach, has guided the team into the postseason. So it's a really interesting one, because the conventional wisdom and what we're always told is you can't go to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. The Patriots did that. Can't go to the playoffs with a rookie head coach. The Eagles did. You can't go to the playoffs, with like an interim head coach. And the Raiders have shown that you can. So all these excuses that franchises have had over the years are suddenly disappearing. For the Chargers, what do you take from it? You take how brilliant Herbert is, just how amazing, and it is a pity that we won't see him in the postseason. The stat that stood out to me was before Sunday, NFL passers had gone 29 for 85 on 4th and 9 or longer, so resulting in 20 first downs, so 23.5 success rate. In the final few minutes of the game between the Raiders and the Chargers, Herbert went 4 for 4 on 4th down, and so over the span of that few minutes, he single-handedly accounted for more than 16% of the NFL's 4th and long passes for first down in the space of a few minutes. He is brilliant, and this one, we will see plenty more of Justin Herbert. I'll leave it to Brian and Mark and yourself to talk about Brandon Staley.
Well, I'm going to have a rant to Brandon Staley, but I don't want to get away from the fact that the Raiders were the deserving winners. Like I know the Chargers came back well at the end. The Raiders were 10 up in the fourth quarter. They were up by 12 in the third. Going into the fourth, they were up by 15. Max Crosby had a hell of a game. And for large parts of the game, Herbert couldn't get anything going. And eventually, obviously, they seemed to kind of tore that Raiders defense out, and they came back well. And it was a fantastic drive. And everybody today is raving about Herbert as opposed to Derek Carr. But you've touched on it, Colin. Like, there's some crucial throws that, having got to overtime, you probably felt the Chargers had all the momentum. And that drive by the Raiders in the 3rd and 8 to Zay Jones, where it looked like it was a really difficult pass. That was a precision pass by Derek Carr. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. It's a big win. But for the Chargers, 29th in defense this season. On 3rd down, they're the worst team in the league. The defense has never been right all year. No, they gave up a 3rd and 23. A 3rd and 23 run. Not a throw, a run. This is back to Ray Rice. Remember that Ray Rice, Baltimore Ravens, 3rd and 27. I think it was against the Chargers as it happened. And this analytic crap that we keep hearing about, you got to go for 4th down. He went for a 4th and 1 on his own 18-yard line because he's the clever head coach in the league. He's the new up-and-coming head coach who knows all about the snazzy stuff. It's ridiculous. There's games this season That Chiefs game, 3 field goals, didn't take it, he would have won the game. They wouldn't be in this position. He keeps doing all these things, and it's okay and it's acceptable because he's one of the bright stars of the future. He cost him the game. The timeout, I mean, like the Raiders, the head coach said after the game, we went on that last drive with the intention to win the game. But obviously, as they got to that situation, there's a minute to go, they know that the Chargers are essentially looking for the draw, the tie. They knew they could run out, and that was their mindset. And then, as Derek rightly said afterwards, it was our strategy completely changed because he called the Chargers called that timeout, and he, as it happened, he said he called it to get his defense set, and he still gives up the force down on a run. So for me, if I was a Chargers fan, I'd be livid with my head coach as opposed to being grateful of seeing Herbert and so on. Or would I have liked seeing Herbert in the playoffs? Absolutely. I would have loved seeing both these teams in the playoffs because I don't really want to watch Big Ben next week because I think he's going to get absolutely demolished by the Chiefs and the Steelers team. You know, we all want to watch attractive NFL football, and these two teams will give us a better game rather than watching Sunday Night Football with Big Ben. That's no disrespect to Steelers fans, but that's the reality of the situation. I'm delighted the Raiders won because they've had a tough time this season. And yeah, you touched on interim head coaches. Like, they've gone through so much this year. You could argue they are one of the stories of the season. And I don't think it's against the realms of possibility. Michael, you're suggesting maybe the Steelers might have a way of winning this game next week. I'd argue the Raiders have a good shot of beating the Bengals. The Bengals haven't been in the playoffs for a long time. Joe Burrow's first playoff game, Joe Mixon's first playoff game, Chase. We don't know how the Bengals are going to react to being in the playoffs again. Everything changes come playoff football. So I think this is a hell of a game. I think the Raiders have a good enough chance of beating the Bengals as anyone in the playoffs. There you go, Mark. It's over to you.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
I don't think it's controversial or inaccurate to say, and sorry, Steelers fans will disagree, but 31 teams will generally say, and most neutral fans will say, would the Chargers be more entertaining in the playoffs than the Steelers? Would they have more of a chance in the playoffs than the Steelers? I'd say absolutely. And the big answer is Justin Herbert really in that offense. I mean, I try to process this game. For anybody who hasn't called it, I mean, just watch the highlights. Watch the whole bloody game again. It was drama. It was great. I mean, as Brian's alluded to, the Raiders got their nose in front and kept in front. They bring in Mariota on the wildcards, not wildcat snaps, but kind of as a sub in for Carr, and he got a couple of key conversions. They both threw the book at each other, but what were the Chargers left with? I mean, the Chargers and Herbert was left with basically trying to find Mike Williams on every single play, and he was let down by drops. And then just when it really mattered, I saw a couple of tweets about people just tell Herbert it's fourth down on every single snap, and he'll find a way of converting the play. To come back from the 15 points, to get it to overtime, the drama of overtime, yes, the timeout, it seemed bizarre at the time. It seemed bizarre. I mean, like, literally, yesterday was such an adrenaline flow. I was not going to watch Sunday Night Football. I ended up starting to watch it and then couldn't turn it off. Had to stay on it. Had to watch the game. I was dying for the game to end in many respects. But, of course, it goes to overtime, and then I'm watching the overtime, and it's like, oh, the Raiders called time. The Chargers called timeout? The flows of a season, though. I mean, look, if the Chargers don't lose, 19 players to a COVID-19 breakout, and they have them available for the Texans game, they probably beat the Texans and therefore don't put themselves in this position, although still, I think they should have thrown that game away. They've been up there with the Vikings in many respects this season. The games you expect them to lose, they win. The games you expect them to win, they lose. I've probably been higher on them than most of you all season, thinking that, I know that they've got it, and ultimately they've let it down. If you think of the ultimate let down franchises, the Chargers are up there. They've had the best quarterback succession plan of any team in the NFL over the last, you could almost go back 40 years. They've literally gone from Fouts to Breeze to Rivers and now to Justin Herbert. Those four have had 33 seasons as the starting quarterback of the Chargers. They missed the playoffs in 22 of those seasons. They never even made a Super Bowl with those guys as their starting quarterback. That betrays more than anything the pain they've put their franchise through, their fans through during all that period of time. So, sorry to the Chargers. Congratulations to the Raiders. Great for the neutral. Great drama, great fun.
Anthony Lynn got criticised for a lot less last year as a Chargers head coach as to what Brandon Staley's got away with this year. As it happens, Anthony has been relieved of his duties in Detroit today. but that was coming anyway because he'd fallen out with Dan Campbell. But I know there comes a time where teams want to move on, fans want to move on from the same boys, same head coach. So it was inevitable he was going to go last year. But bearing in mind where they were last year and where they finished this year, there's very little difference. In fact, defensively, bearing in mind the stadium is supposed to resolve all those issues. They've regressed to where they were last year.
Yeah, there's a alternate universe where the Chargers beat the Cowboys the second week of the season. They beat the Patriots. They beat the Broncos in Denver, and they beat the Texans, and they're 13-4, even with losing last night. It's on them. It's on Staley. It's on. There's no excuses really. Herbert, I think you've covered the whole game here, boys. But Herbert's incredible. Herbert's not going away. The Chargers aren't going away. It'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from this. But I can only imagine how disappointed the players, the management must feel, especially seeing the Raiders press conference at the end, because it seemed like they were going to just nail it out. So stunning. I don't think, honestly, lads, I don't think we'll see something like that for a long time again. But if I'm a Chargers fan, I've got high expectations going into next year, because that is going to take a lot to get over. If I'm a Chargers fan, in terms of the management, in terms of the coaching and the team, what a way to go out knowing that you're not going to play again for another 9 months, and just finally to see the lip syncing. Herbert saying, "I've never wanted a tie more in my life." Just unbelievable. And the tie at the start of the day on Bet365, I'm saying that because it was the only one to offer it, was 50-1 at the start of the day.
Well, Michael, a little shout out to a gentleman in Vegas who put $1,000 on the Jags to win on the money line and it to be level at the end of regulation between the Chargers and the Raiders. He turned that $1,000 into $115,000 last night.
Can I just make one final point? I just like to call it as well. The Raiders had accepted the tie and whatever about the tie now and just nailed it. They would have been going to Kansas City this weekend, and they knew that. They knew the permutation of the draw, and we've spoken about the two games in which they played this year. They haven't played well in either of those games. They've been blown out. So you'd have to question as well: was that in their thoughts? You know, do we really want to go back into Kansas City? Okay, it's a divisional game again, third time round. Who knows? But the reality is, we haven't matched up well against that team twice this year. Let's go off somewhere else and take our chances. And they won the last 4 games of the season. The Raiders, and they've been playing playoff football for a couple of weeks now. We saw that last week in Indianapolis. Like today, a lot of it is about Herbert. I don't think the Raiders have been getting the kudos they deserve, having gone through all the struggles this season. So, great win, big win, great game.
It's just the manner of his throws, Brian. I think that's what's probably standing out to people, plus just how it ended. And I think people will like. It's the fact that the other stat that stood out to me, Josh Jacobs had 130 of his 132 yards came after contact. So if you're looking to criticize Staley, that's his run defense has been abysmal, and he made no changes to that throughout the season. Like, that's an embarrassment. 130 of 132 yards came after contact. And I think it's going to be very difficult. I think Staley's going to need to have a quick start next year, because just like when a loss is that difficult to stomach, it's very difficult to, if you don't get out to a quick start. The recriminations will all start next year, and players will begin to say, hey, you're the guy who cost us last year. He's obviously a very smart guy, but he and the Chargers, you know, they need to get over this, and that's one of the difficulties with the NFL. You now have 9 months to mull on it, so they might need some sort of spark in free agency or the draft, something that the fans can kind of gel behind, because otherwise, long off season ahead.
2019 run defense, Colin. Yeah, says it all.
And just one final point, Michael. You said we won't see much like this. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in the NFL. I mean, in history, in terms of it, we've had, winning your in games, but nothing like that where, both teams had something meaningful to play for. Both were in a winning you're in, and everything about it impacted a third team, being the Steelers. Like that last drive in regulation that Herbert put together, 19 plays. We don't see 19 play drives every day of the week. And each one must have felt like a paper cut of epic proportions to the entirety of the Steeler Nation out there, as well as obviously all the teams involved in it. So just brilliant stuff, really.
Yeah, and Colin saying in the comments, the Raiders have had 5 walk-off wins this season. Gridden and Ruggs, I now need blood pressure medication. It's I'm sure Raiders fans and Chargers fans need to sit down after that there last night and after the last few weeks. And yeah, just wait to week 19, Mark. It should be interesting. And finally from me, lovely tribute to John Madden last night.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. We done well. 21 minutes, but we done well, I think. Okay. Tennessee Titans. The Irish Titans. Shout out to Irish Titans because they've been watching this whole show. We see you. I also, lads, seen the tweet that I got last night at halftime saying it's over. And when it went within one score, I was sitting going, "Oh my God, could you actually imagine the scenes?" Calm Texans showing some fight, fair play to them. But the Titans get the win. They get the bye week. It goes through Tennessee, and good luck to anybody going up against Derrick Henry over the next 2 or 3 weeks. It's going to be a very interesting few weeks.
Yeah, well, it will be interesting to see how Henry comes back and can he hit the ground running, as we know how effective he can be, and obviously having the week off will help, and everything having to go through Music City helps as well. But you'd have to say kudos to the Texans as well, playing hard in the last week of the season. The talk around David Culley, again, just shows that franchise. It's ridiculous what goes on there in the front office, and Mike Silver rightly calling out the league today for some of the decisions that you see made. I would have to say Davis Mills really impressive. I mean, essentially goes up against Tannehill and the Titans in a shootout, and came up short. But for a guy taken in the third round, given what he's had to work with, he has 4 games of more than 300 yards passing. There are some quarterbacks taken in 2019 who in 3 years in the league don't have 4 games of 300 yards passing. It'll be very interesting when Henry comes back, because they've gotten there, and kudos to them. 91 players they had to use, so it was a very good job by Mike Vrabel. But I think everybody at the Tennessee Titans will be delighted to welcome Derrick Henry back into the fold.
You're 21-0 up and you're coasting towards the number 1 seed. Sure. Why would you want it that way? You'd rather watch a bit of blood and thunder and a bit of excitement in the second half and bite your fingernails to the very end. But at 21-0, the camera went on Tannehill and a few of the guys on the sideline, and they were all joking and laughing. It was very much, well, this is over. We're home and hose. And it was probably in around the time that the Irish Titans put out their tweet, and at that stage, you could clearly understand. Look, this again for me, it was more about Cody. We've asked, is he going to be the head coach next season? They're saying this week they're going to have a full evaluation and make decisions. So it's not clear cut that he's going to come back. But I think it's fair to say, bearing in mind when he took over to start the season, and I still think back to our show in the Aviva where we had the right thing down about this particular team and the head coach and how many games they're going to win. They've held their own, and we kind of touched on the fact that they won a couple of games recently, played well in San Francisco last week, came back well. I think that the key part of the game, really, when they got within 1 score in the fourth quarter, they allowed the Titans kind of rallied and went down and had a nice long drive and got the touchdown to essentially kill the game off. And I know they came back with a late score, but that was the point. They needed to hold them at that particular time of the fourth quarter to have the opportunity to win the game. It didn't materialize. But for the Titans, look, divisional games are always tough, but they'll be glad it's over now. They can focus on 2 weeks, and let's see how fit Derrick Henry will be, because we've seen players come in previously who've been out for a couple of months in the playoffs and it hasn't worked out because they're not match ready.
Look, huge congratulations to the Titans. Looked like they were going through a bit of a bad patch. 3 losses in 4 games. Managed to right the ship well enough and take the number 1 seed. I mean, your record is what it says it is. They have been the number 1 team in the AFC over this season. Deserved number 1 seed holders. However, the problem is this. Unless Derrick Henry is going to walk back through that door as Derrick Henry, as we know and love him. What they showed yesterday is exactly why they can win games. They can beat anyone in the AFC. But without Derrick Henry, they don't scare anyone. There is no team in those playoffs that doesn't look at Tennessee and went, yeah, we're not that scared about going international. Yeah, we can take them. Doesn't mean they're going to win. Of course not. But the fact of the matter is, they are a number one seed. Nobody's looking at as a juggernaut. Nobody's looking at as, oh God, that's just a walkover. They should be the presumptive favourites of that. Vrabel has done an amazing job, as the guys alluded to, juggling the amount of players they have, keeping the season on track and everything else. But does Ryan Tannehill look like anything other than a walking liability at times without Derrick Henry there to ensure that he's drawing all the attention? No. Tannehill's dangerous. Their defense, which we've commented on, has improved significantly over the year, is super impressive, can get a lot of pressure up front. But if you can handle that front, then you can make plays, as Davis Mills, who deserves credit, proved yesterday. So I called it out before, I believe, and I think I'm right in this, the last time Tennessee had the number one seeding, they promptly crashed and burned. They were one and done, and that was Jeff Fisher's era, but they were a very, very good team that year, very powerful team behind an amazing running game. And I think back when Vince Young was quarterback and it was Chris Johnson and then Dale White as the 1-2 punch. But I'm not saying that's going to happen to Tennessee, but this is why nobody's kind of saying, well, they're going to walk into the Super Bowl. Certainly, I don't think. I'm trying to think of anyone. They're probably the most upset the Chargers didn't make the playoffs because their bloody run defense, they probably run up 400 yards against them in some respects. But they've done all they can do. They've got home field advantage, so fair play to them. But look at
I wonder, sorry, Mark, as a part of this, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, and the Titans fans probably won't like me saying this, and we've seen players come out recently and say, previous players going in there, they don't find going into that particular stadium too concerning. Where you go into Arrowhead, you go into Mile High, Foxborough to a certain extent, the fans, you're going up against fans as much as you're going up against the team. And we've seen previous players recently say it's not the case there, and we've seen players go in saying, don't feel it when I go in there. I wonder if there's a part of that comes into the picture. You
go into SoFi for a home 49ers game as well, Brian.
Matthew Stafford said after the game he was struggling getting the plays in in the home game. Here, Michael.
Sorry, lads. Sorry. Don't agree with you, Mark, at all. But that's not because it's nearly an hour in, and we need to get through the NFC, and then there's been loads of people fired.
No, but okay, then give me one reason why you should be scared of the Titans. Other than Derrick Henry. Assume Derrick Henry isn't back to his full strength. Why that team that we've seen for the last 8 weeks in the NFL should be terrifying.
Well, every week's different. And you know it yourself as a Patriots fan, and I know it myself for my team, and every week brings new challenges. But yesterday, what impressed me that much about the Titans was that receiving core. Guys like, sorry, I had it on the screen here. I can't pronounce his name. Is it double barrel? Because it's not double barrel in the system. Nick Westbrook? Has he got a second name?
There's a couple of guys. There's Westbrook and there's another guy with a big. I won't even try to go there. But
he's got a weird name. But Westbrook is 78 yards.
There's other players stepping up. In fairness, there has been other players stepping up over the past few weeks.
Massively. AJ Brown, Julio getting his first touchdown yesterday, and that's just on the receiving. Like if the defense can get it together and Derrick Henry runs, and Hillard with Foreman, dingity ding, first, second, third. Oh, hold on, throw the ball. First, second, third, throw the ball. I just think there's such a bias between other teams in the AFC just because of the last couple of seasons, and I think Tennessee have as much chance. Well, of course they have as much chance today because they're number one seed, but I think they take this week, they rest up, and they go into it against whoever they're going to get in 2 weeks' time. But for me, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tennessee going into SoFi. Seriously. Okay.
On we go.
Yes, let's wrap up. And just a reminder, thanks, folks. Thank you for everyone commenting tonight. Really appreciate it. We'll try and get some other comments on the screen as well. The AFC East was won last night by the Buffalo Bills, and the Patriots lost in Miami, and they're playing each other this weekend. The only big thing there is it's in Buffalo. Looking forward to this game. However, have we anything to add on that there? Brian, I think you got right with the Dolphins pick. Colin, I was surprised at how well the Dolphins played against the Patriots, just generally. And Jets put it up a wee bit against the Bills.
Yeah, well, we 9 sacks the Bills had. 9 sacks. It's a huge issue that the Jets have there. If Zach Wilson is to have any chance, you can't be taking the amount of sacks in a game. I think 87 yards he had passing. The Jets. Yeah, it's an off season of rebuilding, and we get to see what Salah and then they can do. For the Bills, they're getting hot at the right time, I suppose. It's been a kind of an up and down season. It's never felt that they really on offense reached the heights that they did last year. Their coordinators are in demand. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see if that's going to have an impact on the playoffs and what that might do with guys doing interviews and stuff like that, or knowing that they potentially have interviews. Will that have any impact? Let's see. It's obviously going to be quite the battle between the Patriots and the Bills, but we'll probably talk a bit more about the Dolphins and that interesting decision of theirs a little bit later.
I think the problem for the Jets, in fairness, they didn't throw any more interceptions yesterday. So, but offensive line this year, Vera Tucker, the first round pick, who they traded up for, draft. He's been out injured. Malik Beckton, who they drafted last year, he's been out injured. So they've been struggling for a large part of the season without a proper offensive line. So, but I still think things are coming together nicely there. I think they've seen improvement. They were in the game till the fourth quarter, but look, the Bills did enough to pull away. The other game, it didn't go the way. I know I picked the Dolphins. It didn't go the way which I expected. I thought it'd be a lot closer than it was for large parts of the game. The Dolphins were coming. They got out to a fast start, but in the same time, the Patriots rallied. And American know better than me. There was 3 opportunities to intercept to it in the game, and then they dropped balls, which is crazy. And then, look, the score at the end is not reflective in a way because the crazy play at the end where there's a touchdown for the Dolphins. But yeah, look, there were struggles yesterday for the Patriots, and it's difficult for next week.
Yeah, no one struggled probably as much as the Jets offense. Another appalling day at the office, really. And Brian said they kept it close, but that wasn't anything to do with their offense. And consider how close and tight it was, even with the Jets giving up a block punt return for a touchdown as well. I mean, their special teams weren't even bailing them out in that regard. The Bills took care of business. They did what they had to do, but again, that's why I called out the Jets earlier on. They played so hard, along with the Texans, long lines. Nobody packed it in this season. They all played hard and fought hard. And for Jets fans, you got 2 picks in the first 7. I think Jets pick at 5 and 7 in the draft. There's some material capital, maybe to move around the board a little bit to hopefully revitalize a roster. And I think Salah's influence has definitely started to be seen in the last couple of weeks in terms of, I mean, you expect to see it over the season, but I think he's starting to really seed out and weed out the right performers. Obviously, this offseason is absolutely critical. But we said when he went to the Jets in the first instance, he was the pick of the coaching hires, the pick of the litter, as it were. And I think Jets fans can have optimism about the job he hopefully will do over the next while. But the question for the Jets will be the question that many teams often ask is, do they have a quarterback? Is Zach Wilson the answer? And unfortunately, that tends to be the core question that a lot of teams have to contend with. I'm not sure that the answer in that is yes just yet, but they're going to have to rely upon him for the next while and try and take advantage of the inequality of a rookie quarterback contract. As for the Patriots and the Dolphins, yeah, the Pats were dreadful in the opening quarter again. Other than last week against the Jags, the last 3 Patriots games, they have put themselves in a hole in the first quarter and not been able to manage to get it out. They've managed to get it close, but not good enough. And frankly, if they play like that next week, it's going to be an absolute walkover. An absolute walkover. So that's not good to see, but it's nice that the Patriots are in the playoffs. It's nice that we get to play a trilogy against the Bills, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But yes, Colin, the one storyline we have to talk about, and I know we're going to talk about coaches later on, is the incongruity in one sense of what they're doing with Flores. There are rational arguments as to why they've moved on, but one of the best coaches in my mind in the NFL. I don't know. these multi-billionaire Florida-based owners who make these weird and wonderful, wacky decisions. Happened in 2021 with Urban Meyer being picked to go to Jacksonville. That didn't work out. I have a funny feeling Stephen Ross will learn to regret this particular decision as well.
Yeah, who did the Jaguars play in London again? So 2 of the 4 coaches that were in London, have now lost their jobs or left. In terms of the Patriots, I thought Mac Jones played some lovely clean passes yesterday. He really did. And there's a positive point from me on Mac Jones. Yeah, interesting performance from the Patriots. Let's see what happens against Buffalo. Delighted that the Bills fans got a chance in a full crowd to celebrate their division title, because I know last year I think it was only like 20 or 30% capacity. And look, just a shout out to a former guest of ours on the show, Steve Tasker, who seemed to be enjoying himself. He looks very happy. And that's all I have to say. I'm very, very excited for this next week. I will save my opinions and my picks until Friday.
And just one thing, Michael, I was getting the 2 New Jersey teams mixed up. The Jets have the 4th and the 10th pick. The Giants have the 5th and the 7th pick. Both of them with 2 in the top 10.
Joyzy. You can see at the bottom of the screen, the Irish NFL show is presented by Matchbook Betting Exchange. The Irish NFL show code gives you £20 or 20 yo-yo to bet on. Money back is cash if your first bet loses. T&Cs are below. 18 plus. Please gamble aware. And thank you to Matchbook. Did we win that bet yesterday?
I haven't checked the account yet.
I wish I
No,
was
we
like,
didn't.
oh
We
yeah,
didn't.
not even
We didn't.
like,
We didn't.
okay.
I'll tell you why we didn't, because one team are 17-0 up, and I think we're going to come to that game if I'm right. They were 17-0 up, and they managed to throw it away, and that was the LA Rams.
Should have listened to me on that one.
Oh, come on. 17-0, you thought you were gone as well.
Let's look at the NFC. So we have a list of what we're going to talk about, and I guess, let's quickly look over the Saints. Disappointing day for the Saints. I think at one point, they done all they had to do. And at one point, and I know we're going to talk about the 49ers on the stretch, but at one point, Colin, the 49ers were dead and buried, and the Saints done what they had to do.
Yeah, and obviously without another QB out, but Sean Payton getting it done. But I think realistically, this was all about the 49ers and the Rams, because it wasn't only Mark, it wasn't only the rest of us who thought at 17-0 things were afoot, because Sean McVay was in the end zone celebrating like he had caught the ball. There was 6:44 to go in the second quarter, and there he was jumping around. You would think if you did that you would want to win the game and win it comfortably and not lose the game in overtime. The issue for the Rams is you can't buy chemistry. It's as simple as that. And they look like a team of superstars who can make unbelievable plays as individuals, but the chemistry just isn't there, I think, at the moment. They've got a week or so to sort it out. For the 49ers, the memes continue today of Kyle Shanahan owning McVay. He just seems to have it over him, and no matter what seems to happen, he wins. And yeah, Stafford is just turning over like that ball at the end, the interception to clinch it was just crazy. In terms of he was going for obviously OBJ, but it was massively underthrown. And the Rams have got a lot to sort out, and we've talked about it before. The Packers, outside of their special teams, are the Packers' issue, but I think you would have to say that they are the standout team. There's no one else who you would say is terrifying and you would say, oh yeah, they're definitely don't want to be playing them. So for all the Rams have spent and given up, I don't think anyone is going to be particularly afraid of them. And Brian already called it out. When Matthew Stafford is saying that they were struggling to get plays in a home game, well, Stan Kroenke, how do you like them apples in your brand new fancy stadium?
It's a demoralising defeat in a way, because they were the 2 seed and now they've dropped to 4. And now they've essentially forgone that second home game, which, as we say tongue in cheek, is not really like a home game now, because we saw the amount of fans. I don't think we'll see as many Arizona fans, unfortunately, next Monday on Monday Night Football in there. But like, it was a sea of red yesterday at that game, and look, it's not a far commute for majority of the 49ers fans who live that side of the world. But Matthew Stafford yesterday looked fine in the first half. Then all of a sudden the 49ers started to get to him. He looked a bit nervy, and as the game went on, he kind of regressed. We've seen that this season, where he struggles, where teams are getting to him and he just gets a little bit nervous and he's edgy with the throws, and he was missing players where he was really efficient in the first half. I thought there was 2 key drives. There was very little time left on the clock at the first half, and the 49ers got it. A lot of people felt they might have just kneed on it and went in at halftime and licked the rules, but they actually went aggressive and they managed to get a field goal. And they, look, at that stage, you're thinking 17-3, it's no big deal. But then they got a touchdown on the first drive of the second half, and then all of a sudden it's mid-third quarter and it's a game. There's only one score in it, but yet they still had to wait until that very last couple of minutes. And a quarterback who's coming off an injury, an operation, what he said, it's a 3 to 4 week operation. He's back playing the following week. Jimmy G, that last drive, he threw for 314 yards yesterday, but he was impressive on that last drive. And I know he has a lot of critics, and we've been up and down this show whether he really is the right answer. But that drive yesterday was really good, and it's a big win. And I mean, I think it's 1988, the last time the 2 teams were in the playoffs, Cowboys and 49ers. And yesterday, last night when I saw that game, I kept thinking back to when I was a young lad watching the Cowboys 49ers trilogy that went on for a couple of years in the championship games in Candlestick Park, and Troy Aikman and Mark, you'll remember Emmett Smith and the guys. And look, it's a great game next weekend. It really whets the appetite. Next Sunday night, 9:30, 49ers going into Dallas.
I'm a bit in shock at the photo Michael just put up. And is it Kittle? What's he doing with the top knot? No, is it? Oh no, it's not. It's Bosa, isn't it? But
no, it is Kittle. It is Kittle.
Kittle? Sorry,
Yes.
I can't get my eyes off the hair, to be honest with you. That's throwing me. And I can't see
Kittle on the Skittles, I think, when he did that.
He's definitely on the Skittles with the top knot.
That he has hair at the top of his head. Is that what's fascinating you, Mark?
It's just jealousy. It's just jealousy, Colin. Basically, that's all I'm giving out about there. Look, for 49ers fans, yesterday Jimmy put the G in legend. He had an amazing performance when it really counted. Mitchell is back. He's back. He's running hard. Debo's doing Debo-y things and looking like the most dynamic threat in the NFL. And their defense, which was non-existent for most of the first half, suddenly came out of hibernation and started to play. And as Brian alluded to, you got midway through the third quarter and everybody, drive started tightening up. Both teams tightened up a little bit more. It was a slugfest. It was the drama going back from there to the Cardinals laying a goose egg again when they had every opportunity. I set it up on our show yesterday. It's like Cardinals will win, Rams will lose, Cards will take the AFC West and have the home field advantage. Nearly there, except Kyler and the boys let me down on that particular prediction. But massive congratulations to the 49ers. Like the Saints, I know there's not much to say. They did everything they had to do. The performance by Sean Payton and that team, did win everything they've had to deal with, 4 different starting quarterbacks and the like, has been impressive. That's a seriously impressive coaching job. But I already look at the Saints next season. I think they're already 17 million over the salary cap. So, the hell of salary cap purgatory continues for them. Another year, but you must give credit to the job and how close they ran everything. But again, like the passion, the drama of it all, going so tight, going so close, loved every second of it. You've got to question one thing: is it nurture or nature that leads to it? We all got told, no, McVay's got his quarterback now. No, Matthew Stafford is freed from the sins of Detroit. Don't worry, now he's going to really show everyone he's capable of doing. And you can say in one respect, yeah, they've got a division title. They've got a great record. They're going to the playoffs. Clearly, it's all going to work out. But I still question whether Matthew Stafford is the answer or the problem at the end of the day to holding you back from a Super Bowl. And I definitely still say Sean McVay is the reason the Rams will not win a Super Bowl. Not if they do, they win it in spite of him, not because of him.
Yeah, and the Rams yesterday really struggled on the ground. I mean, they bring all this hype at the start. Cam Akers, he had 3 yards. Sonny Michel had 21 carries for 43 yards. Like, genuinely, I think I could have given that maybe a wee run for its money. Cooper Kupp had 6 times the amount of rushing yards that Cam Akers had yesterday. It's an interesting comparison between Matthew Stafford and the situation with Jimmy Garoppolo. Matthew Stafford, to be fair, now had less completed yards than Jimmy G, but he still had 2 picks. Both of them had 2 picks. It's a really interesting situation. The Rams looked completely away in that game yesterday, and then they weren't. We have went through 8 minutes and nobody's mentioned Debo. I mean, that man is unbelievable, and I have to apologize to the Niner fans. Like, I was picking the Rams every day of the week here, but my God, they look so good. Debo Samuel rushing had 45 yards rushing, but then 95 yards receiving, and then Eli Mitchell. This team is a very interesting concept. If Jimmy G can keep it together, it's very interesting. And just I want to give a shout out very quickly to everyone who's commenting tonight, but especially Irish Cowboys on Twitter who have said, ask Brian if he's ordered his Niners jersey. I just want to watch a game next week where none of us care because none of us are in it. I mean, Mark's not really in it, but we'll talk about that on Friday.
With a rookie QB, they're there or thereabouts. One thing on Debo as well. I think Mark did give him a shout, but the other thing is, and we were talking about kind of the Saints. Sean Payton loves a gadget player, right? And always has. And Mark, you're talking about them 70 million over the cap. When he looks at Debo and he looks at Cordell Patterson, I imagine you can see Sean Payton, what will he come up with next year? Because the other thing is Debo Michael not only rushing and receiving, but through that touchdown pass, so Sean Payton, watch, he'll find somebody if it's free agency, if it's the draft. There'll be a new gadget player in New Orleans next year.
Can't wait to see the hype after. Well, someone's going to be upset on Monday morning. Someone's going to be upset. That's great couple of games. Rams Cardinals is that late Monday night game on ESPN. Looking forward to that. Apparently, Sky are in the studio 3 nights. That was the exclusive from Mr. Reinbold, who is coming on the show on Friday again. Apparently,
that's the killer for us, really, in terms of the new wildcard weekend. While the TV networks love it, while America gets 3 primetime games, for us it's 3 super late nights out of the 7 days.
Mark, it must be awful because you walk what is it 0.04 miles to your work the next morning, or
I have such a long commute, Michael. It's terrible.
It must be awful. I mean, you're not going on the motorway at all the next morning. I'm looking forward to it. There is the games. I know, Brian, you're going to give us some interesting news in a second. There is the games at the weekend: Raiders, Bengals, Patriots, Bills, Eagles, Bucks. 49ers, Cowboys. Bucks get the win yesterday as well. Steelers, Chiefs, and the Cardinals against the Rams. A lovely setup for a lovely weekend. Green Bay and Tennessee have the week off. Brian.
Well, now that we've reached the end of the regular season, I was recapping on what our picks were last September when we did our preview show in MyGaff, as you like to call it, Michael, and we can hang our heads in shame because we didn't do very well. I'll start with our wild cards. Who wants to go first? I'll go with you first, Michael. The NFC, you did well in the NFC. Your wild cards were the 49ers, the Cards, and the Pack. So you got 2 out of 3. Obviously, you went for the Vikings doing the division. And in the AFC, you went for the Chargers. No, Ravens, no, but you did go for the Steelers. So not too bad. Mark, you ready for this? Seattle? No. Vikings? No. Giants? No. Wild cards. Chargers? No.
What was I thinking?
Giants. The Giants.
The Giants, yeah, I know. What was it?
Yeah, here. Good night.
Chargers, Ravens, Patriots. So you got
1 out of 6, Brian. 1 out of 6. Wait till we get to the division winners. I'm happier with those ones.
Colin, 49ers, Seahawks, Falcons. Falcons, okay. So you got 1. Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins, 1. Myself, 49ers, Seattle, Giants, 1. Browns, Dolphins, and I'll save the best to last, the Raiders. And divisional winners, we all went for the Packers with the exception of Michael. He went for the Vikings. We all went for Washington. That didn't work out too well. We all went for the Rams. I don't think we can really rave about that one the way things played out. And we all went for the Bucks. On the AFC side, we all went for the Titans. We all went for the Bills. It's a lot more clear cut, these ones. We all went for the Chiefs. And mixed bag. You all went for the Browns and I went for the Ravens. So none of us came up with that. That's the beauty of picking it in September, isn't it?
We are a diverse show. We come from all corners of this island and we want to include everybody. So I'm going to very quickly make sure that you're not disappointed. So I'm going to talk very quickly in 45 seconds about the games that we may have missed out. The Broncos didn't show up against the Chiefs. They did, they didn't. The Eagles against the Cowboys, I don't know. I fell asleep after the first quarter. We're not talking about the Giants in Washington.
No.
Browns beat the Bengals.
No. At one point.
Oh yeah, we will.
Because Mr. O'Leary, and it was understandable, and the Giants got very annoyed last year when Philadelphia played funny buggers in the last game of the season, pulled the QB. What Joe Judge did was equally as against the spirit of the game as what the Eagles did last year. And it is ridiculous that he remains in situ. And that does need to be commented on.
Let's talk about Joe Judge in a second.
There's no excuse for it, Mark.
He did it. We watched the game long enough that we understand when a team is down. I'm not defending what he's done, right, first and foremost. Okay. What he did yesterday was embarrassing. Okay. But it wasn't a quarterback sneak, as I said. It was a fixture formation play. The reason he did it was to actually give his punter more space, because last week in Chicago, he made an absolute hames of that situation, and they ended up having to give a safety away. So he said after the game, and I knew when I watched it, exactly what he was going to say was, I was trying to give my punter a little bit more room because I knew I'd have to give it back. He then defended that by saying on the following drive, they actually stopped Washington. So he felt in his head he'd succeeded in what he wanted to do. The reality is, Mark, other teams who do the exact same thing week in, week out, hand it to their running back who gets 2 or 3 yards, and there's the space you need. He was also on the 4-yard line as opposed to the 1-yard line. So why he felt he needed extra room for the punter is beyond me.
Brian, I'm just going to say one thing back to Colin. Colin, last year it was based on malice, and the rule of thumb, and it was, let's be honest.
And it wasn't malice for Joe Judge to do that to his offense.
No, we didn't hear the end of it for about a week last year. So come on.
I don't trust you. What was the point in his offense playing the rest of the game? What was the point? I don't trust any of you. Not once. I don't trust you. I don't trust you on 2 plays.
Calm down. Last year, the Eagles, and we rightly heard about it because they deliberately threw away for the draft positioning. They didn't play to win the game. That was apparent in relation to it. And what the Giants did, and the message of this is always, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence. It was an incompetent call. It was an incompetent offense. It wasn't malice or forethought as it was with the
problem now is you've got an incompetent head coach, you've got an incompetent offensive coordinator in Kitchens, and you've got an incompetent quarterback in Jake Fromm, and the whole situation is a mess. And how he's still there at this stage of today. Now there's a meeting actually going on at the moment between him, the owner, and the other owner who's flown in for the meeting. So maybe that's significant. Who knows what will come out during the night. But he didn't trust. Yeah, Colin was right. He didn't trust the quarterback. He didn't trust the running back. He's supposed to be a generational player, by the way. To even go and get a 4th down or get 3 or 4 yards. Anyway, look, I don't think we should be wasting our time discussing.
Anyway, we shouldn't. You're absolutely right.
Barkley, sorry. Yes, just very quickly, because I was in a really good run there, as like me going back to the Fesh days doing a poem. Vikings demolished the Bears. The Buccaneers beat the Panthers. And I think that's it. I know Colin did mention the Packers losing to the Lions. For anybody saying, if you don't cover our team, we try our best. Last week's show on Monday night was 2.5 hours
And we're not
So
talking
we're
2.5
trying.
hours tonight. Actually, the Lions game, Danny Amendola, 2 touchdowns, was a bit of a surprise to say the least, but he's been injured for most of the season for the Lions. Michael, I wanted to bring a point back. Sorry, do you want to finish something first? I've interrupted your flow.
No, I think everything's been covered. Like we're obviously going to talk about the coaches. Do we
Yeah.
have to talk about Fangio? I don't really want to talk about it.
No. We're not talking about the Broncos coaches, for fuck's sake.
Good.
Anyway,
That's all right. I don't want to talk about it.
No, but before we go into that, I want to talk about the games coming up in one point. And it's actually notable. You were putting up the graphic there constantly, and it kept reminding me. You think about it, the 49ers Cowboys, right, is, as Brian said, it's an historic matchup. It is, it is like we're going back to the 90s now when this game really mattered. But in fact, it's featuring a matchup between, Dak's one of the younger quarterbacks in one respect, but we're talking about two of the most transcendent young talents. When you think about Micah Parsons, when you think about Deebo Samuel and how the two of them are going to match up. By contrast, the Cards-Ravens game is more about the veterans. Look at the Rams. The Cardinals-Rams game, I should say, Ravens. Look at the Rams. It's Stafford. It's Beckham. It's Von Miller type of thing. And even with the Cards, you're talking about not just Chandler Jones, who's plenty of seasons in the league now at this stage, but of course DeAndre Hopkins, and especially coming back yet again like Cybertron from the depths of the cybernetic universe, having been re-engineered like the $6 million man once again, JJ Watt, who's been reactivated and will somehow appear for the playoffs. So it's kind of funny how the older game isn't necessarily about the old veterans who are going for that one last run.
And this morning I went on the Matchbook account and I was interested to see what the lines are from a betting perspective. I suppose it's always good to know how Vegas are looking at the games. Who do you think has the biggest line this weekend in terms of who do you expect to win by the most? Who do you think is going to be the blowout game?
Bucks.
Yeah, -9. In your war column, that means the Bucks expect the Bucks to win by 10 or more points. That's the line. The rest of them are all fairly competitive. -4s, -3s, I think -6.5 on the Bengals. But yeah, the biggest line is -9. The Bucks, probably reflective of a Bucks offense that yesterday was very sporadic for a while. Then all of a sudden, bang, they put up 41 points coming out of the game. Actually, I didn't get a chance. What was the Brady issue over yesterday when you had a bit of a ding-dong with the head coach?
Gronk was due a bonus if he had one more completion, $500,000, and he got it. No other quarterback would get away with that. But let's talk about the coaches. Just very, very quickly, thank you to Cian for your comment about the Seahawks. Appreciate it, Cian. We will get talking about the Seahawks ASAP, and we really appreciate your continued support of the show. Coaches, Vic Fangio was the first one to go yesterday. That happened around 2 o'clock our time or so. And there's been a plethora of firings today. The Bears got what they wanted. Well, 2/3 anyway. And where are we starting here? Because there's a lot. I didn't make any graphics because I focused on this weekend because, frankly, meh.
Well, Flores, surely. Everything
Let's
else.
start with Flores in Miami. And I want to say this right now because I'll never forget. You boys went to, Mark and Brian went to the presser in London. Granted, right. Miami went in the run, and they'd done extremely, extremely well. And they were playing fantastic football in the last few weeks. Well, good football in the last few weeks of the season. I thought he was gone from that moment. It's clearly something.
I think we all did. Yeah.
And that was the whispers. You commented on it. So.
No, I commented on the time that me and Mark, the one thing that stood out from that press conference was, with the exception of Mark getting all the questions in, was how I felt, I wouldn't say vile was the right word, but they were very aggressive towards him in a manner that was like as if they wanted him to be shown the door as quickly as possible. They really, I felt, bearing in mind how the game played out, it wasn't like they got blown out. It was a difficult game. They should have won. There was some dubious calls by referees in the game, and they also had an opportunity to win the game at the end and putting it away. And they got outfoxed by Overmore with that. They thought they were going for the Hail Mary at the end. I'm going on about a game that was 3 months ago. But the point being, at that press conference, it was clear and evident that they weren't happy with him. I don't know, he seemed very reserved in the way he was answering questions. Maybe they just don't get enough out of him. And their job ultimately is to get more and more out of the head coach and make their job easier for doing their articles. But he was very guarded, and they still went for him. Fair, Mark, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, then look at the way they bounce back. And I don't know. The only thing I can put this down to if I'm being really brutally honest. Okay, Flores isn't a perfect head coach. There is no question of that. But look how he brought that team back from the brink. Look at his record over his entire term there in Miami. He was definitely heading in the right direction. The biggest thing that's let him down, I mean, we still can talk about this for every single team, of course, is the quarterback situation. And I'm personally convinced, looking at the overall situation, all the vibes and noises come out during the year, Stephen Ross wants Deshaun Watson in Miami. Brian Flores didn't want Deshaun Watson in Miami and stuck with Tua and publicly said, hey, Tua is our quarterback, I'm sticking with Tua and stuff like that. I think ultimately that's more than anything the main driver. There is a bit of a friction with the GM in Miami as well in relation to it that's continuing to seed some of the discontent there, and it may be that there was ultimately a he goes or I go type of situation. But Flores will be snapped up in a heartbeat. He's one of the top coaches in the NFL. He's a brilliant defensive mind. And I think Miami are really going to regret this decision. You can say he has flaws. Sorry, I said he has flaws. He does have flaws. Look at his views on the offensive side. He's had 3 offensive coordinators and 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years. I mean, that kind of betrays, does he really have an offensive philosophy? Did he have the right staff? Can he make the right staff around him in order to lead a franchise effectively? But that's, to me, the only shocker we've had all weekend so far through Black Monday. Everything else is kind of, right decision, right time, needed to be done.
Can I just say, sorry, Conor, I know you want to make a point on this, but this GM is obviously he's won the warrior. There's obviously, they battled it out, and he's the one that's been kept on. And the press conference, they said the GM and the head coach weren't aligned on the plans going forward, which is a power struggle. That GM skipped on Herbert and drafted to it. That GM is the one that messed around with the picks last year in the draft and put them in a kind of a more difficult position than where they're at. Now, I know they got Jalen Watt in the end, but he's done a lot of things that aren't, productive in a manner that brings his team forward, not the head coach. But yet, in the end, the head coach is the one that takes the fall.
Yeah, that's it. Andrew Brandt made the point today that the Dolphins drafted Tua ahead of Herbert and traded the Eagles a first-round pick to move up 6 spots. But it's the head coach who's fired. And you would have to say that, today is the day where you get all sorts of leaking from all sides. So Flores had issues with everybody. It was Flores who wanted Deshaun Watson, have been some of the stories. But ultimately, the interesting thing, I suppose, he's had back-to-back winning seasons. His issues, particularly in the first year and this year, were slow starts. He got off to a really slow start, I think losing the first 7 games in his first season. And then went 5-4 after that, and obviously this season 1-7, and ultimately just missing the playoffs again in the end. So billionaires do whatever billionaires want to do, and it will be very interesting to see what the Dolphins end up doing in terms of a head coach and how it works out over the course of the next few years. But that's the nature of this league, is obviously even if you have a winning season, unless you're getting to the playoffs, there's no guarantee that you will retain your job.
Incompetency, there's no other word for it. They'll probably go after Watson thinking they're doing the right thing, and let's see if they're 3rd or 4th and probably have a London game next year. Well done. Well done, Miami. My God.
Brian Flores should be at the top of the 6th. Well, take Dolphins out of the question. There's 5 roles available at the moment. He should be the top candidate for every single one of them. They should be all clamoring the game in for an interview immediately.
Yeah, Michael, incompetency, he led the team to a winning record.
I think he's some of the ownership.
I'm talking about the ownership. Right? I'm talking about the decision to actually sack him. So I think
the decision to sack him. Thank God. Okay.
Yeah, and there's been press conferences last week where Tua doesn't look happy either. it just seems to be going all over the shop. I want to very quickly, I know you don't want to talk about it too much, Mark, I'm joking. Fangio was the first one to go, and the Broncos today have a request for permission to interview Patriots coach Gerard Mayo per sauce. Mayonnaise. I will just quickly round this up. I think it's a cert that Dan Quinn takes his job in a short-term element because of the ownership situation. Colin, would you agree with that?
Yes.
You don't think Eric Bieniemy will get it?
I might
No,
like
no.
might like Eric Bieniemy to get it, but given the history in Colorado, I don't believe he will. I personally would love us to take the chance. I think Eric Bieniemy is well deserving of a head coaching role, but I believe, like Michael said, it will be Dan Quinn. You've got the ownership issue to contend with. You've got a QB situation to contend with. Quinn will be delighted to get a head coaching gig so soon again, and it gives him a springboard. If it works out, great. If not, a new owner comes in and can clear house.
Yeah, I was just going to say the Mayo piece, I mean, to be absolutely honest with you, it's compliance with the Rooney Rule requirements.
Yeah.
There is no way that the Broncos need a defensive-minded coach who has played linebacker and defense in the league only very recently as well. They need an offensive mind. They need someone who can fix the offense, who can identify a quarterback. So beyond me and people like this makes a lot more sense.
I would hope, though, that it isn't the case, that the fact that they're interviewing a number of minority coaches means that it isn't just compliance with the Rooney Rule. And Mark, while you might say it is offense, I don't believe that's what they will look at. I think they will say they can bring in an OC, and all the talk, be it from Denver media or be it even from Ian Rappaport, who hinted strongly that Dan Quinn is the favorite and talked about his connections across the league and how he'd be able to bring somebody in. So I think that one is probably taken care of. But it's more, what does Minnesota do? Because we all thought Zimmer was going to go, but I don't know how many people thought that the GM would be following him out the door.
I just want to very quickly thank Ron for all his comments tonight. Ron was mentioning the guy that put up 30. Or a guy that is coached for a team that was put up against 30 for Arizona yesterday. Vance Joseph is available as a head coach for a team. And yes, Colin mentioned there. Thank you, Ron. Colin mentioned there that Zimmer is out in Minnesota. The GM's out as well.
Rick Spielman, been with them since 2006, I want to say. He's been GM since 2011. He's out
And
as well.
Zimmer's a massive long, like Mark. It's obvious now, but for some reason in me, I thought that Zimmer wasn't there for as long as 2014, so it's a long time.
Yeah, no, Zimmer. I mean, Zimmer's record has been reasonable along the way. Did bring them to an NFC Championship game at one point, but they promptly didn't turn up. So it was inevitable the way the season's gone. But clearing house completely. I mean, look at that. 2 NFC North teams completely clearing house. 1 year after the other NFC North team completely cleared house. It's remarkable how playing in the division with Aaron Rodgers ends up cleaning lots of things out, and kind of reminiscent of what used to happen in the AFC East constantly. Oh, let's just change everything. It's like, oh yeah, that's really consistent. I meant to say, actually, Michael, because Colin's kind of alluded to it, and I did call up Mayo and the Rooney Rule applicability. I made a mistake a minute ago. I think I was talking about Amendola, and I said the Lions, and I meant the Texans. But that's not half as big a mistake as the NFL seems to be making in increasing diversity and minority coaching hires. With Flores' firing in a league that's over 70% African American, there is now only 2 coaches of African American, head coaches of African American descent. So that is a startling statistic. And in fact, I mean, even though we've now changed the rules that draft picks are allocated if you hire minority candidates and the like, is a stunning indictment on the failure of the Rooney Rule in many respects. And Stephen's comment, absolutely. Like, I mean, it is smacks of tokenism and not really meaningful opportunity in relation to it. And that is not to be encouraged in any way.
And Mark, one of the 2 remaining minority head coaches who let's remember, hasn't had a losing season in 15 years, was asked earlier in the year if he'd be taking a college job.
Yeah.
In terms of the jobs that are available, and you guys might obviously see this differently because you are Broncos fans, but if you're asking me which one I think is the most attractive job at the moment is now open, I'd go with the Vikings because they're not too far off being a they really probably should be a playoff team this year. And I know people have question marks over Kirk Cousins, but he's an established quarterback in the league. You get to start with him. You've got Cook, you've got Jefferson. Defense made a step up this year. They just couldn't put it together consistently in games, and for large parts of the season, they only lost 6 or 7 games by less than a touchdown. They're not far off from being a playoff team again. I think there will be a lot of head coaches in the running for that job.
I think, if I remember right, it's 8, Brian. I think it was an NFL record in terms of games lost.
Just in terms of the rebuild and what's needed going into certain teams, I think Vikings are probably the team that's there that could quickly turn their fortunes around very quickly and be competitive against Packers in that division.
Yeah, Mojo Dank, thank you for your comment mentioning maybe McDaniels to Minnesota. Let's see what happens. Let's talk about the Bears. Finally, let's talk about the Bears.
I do want to get on Chicago. No, Michael, one point about the Broncos. I do want to get on to Chicago, but one point about it.
Broncos?
I can't remember who in the NFL, maybe it was Rappaport or somebody. No, somebody said today is like, hang on, 10 years up against Mahomes and Herbert, no quarterback, no plan to get a quarterback, a week draft, 4 quarterbacks. Why does that Broncos head coach job apparently look so inviting? I can't remember who put it out, but it looks like
it was
Kyle
Brandt
and Colin
on Good Morning Football.
Oh, it was Colin. That's who it was.
And,
that's where I saw it.
I wish I had Kyle Brandt's job. No, it was Kyle Brandt who said it. And what will make it attractive is the millions and millions of dollars that you will be paid to do the job. But I suppose, no, I mean, I get what Brian is saying. I think that the Vikings job is attractive, but as long as you're happy with the fact that Kirk Cousins is going to cost $40 million against the cap. So for a head coach, they have to be prepared to deal with that one and live with that. I suppose the Bears, I mean, the Bears are now in a situation where they knew this was coming for some time. They knew, unlike Minnesota, where maybe the GM was a surprise that it was going to happen for Pace as well. So, go ahead.
Just want to say this to the Bears fans, and I want Bears fans to screen grab this for this time next year, January the 11th, 10th, 2023. AP Coach of the Year 2018. Head coaching record 34 to 31.523. Okay, not great. Never won anything in the postseason. So let's look at some negatives there. First season, first in the NFC North over the Packers. Third in the NFC North in 2019, missed the playoffs. Second in the NFC North, made the playoffs. Obviously lost in that wildcard game to the Saints, and didn't make the playoffs this year. Had a very disappointing season this year. I completely agree with that. I can't wait to see what happens in Chicago, because whoever's coming in must be walking in the bounty.
Well, they want Harbaugh. The Bears fans want Harbaugh. But the gas thing is, he's been proclaimed as like the product of someone come back again. When he was the quarterback for the Bears back Michigan,
he has the easiest gig in the world. I think
he will. I think it'll be the Raiders, but I don't think it'll be the Bears. He was the quarterback coach for the Raiders back in the day. That's where he got his first starting coach, was the quarterback coach, and Al Davis gave him that opportunity. So he's got ties to the Raiders. The Bears fans are going about his ties to Chicago because he was quarterback there. When he was the quarterback there, I'm old enough now, I remember him there. They didn't like him as the quarterback. They haven't like many quarterbacks in fairness, and they've had a lot. So now all of a sudden he's the answer. So I'm not sure with that. I'm not sure if you're Harbaugh and you want to make that step away from the league, you're looking at all the opportunities that are available. Even today has been suggested that he'd go back to Miami because Stephen Ross and him have a relationship because he's donated to the Michigan, the fund, and they've got a relationship there. And he said straight away today, he's not for us. So I think it could be the Raiders.
The grass isn't always greener. That's all I'll say.
When he was in the NFL, he had a 70% win rate. I know he's a bit quirky. I know he had his struggles.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about Nagy. I'm talking about Nagy. I think Chicago, obviously they're rebooting, but I think it's going to take a long time.
I think the GM is more important than the head coach right now. They need to get that right. They're going to interview Morocco Brown from the Colts tomorrow, and a lot of Colts backroom staff will get opportunities to interview. Because in fairness to the Colts with Ballard, their drafting has been quite good over the past few years. It's unfortunate they missed out on the playoffs, but he's done a really good job there, and you can see why people will go after their guys.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's if you're a pyromaniac or you're a fan of the band Ash, up and down Patrick there, Michael, and they want to sing a bit of Burn Baby Burn, that's
Baby
exactly
Burn.
Burn Baby Burn. That's exactly what's going on in Minnesota and Chicago. Burn it all down and let's start again. But if you're a coach looking at the opportunities, I mean, how do you rank them? I mean, what's the most attractive to you? And I think the first question is, do you have a quarterback? We keep establishing it's the most important position on the field. It's pretty important. And in Miami, you've got question marks over Tua. In Chicago, I think there are still absolutely justifiable question marks over Justin Fields. Is he the second coming as was promised and proclaimed to us all? So when you look around at that,
I don't think anyone promised that.
No, I think everyone on draft night in Chicago promised themselves.
Come on, Chicago media this year have been
you say, Colin, rightly. I mean, like, are you comfortable in paying Kirk Cousins X? I'm more comfortable in paying Kirk Cousins for one season than I am still paying Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, for example, $28.4 million on the cap next year. And Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr aren't bad options in relation to it. I mean, yes, if you're looking purely at quarterback, the most attractive thing in the world by a million miles is going to be Jacksonville. But the Raiders' job doesn't look too bad, to be really frank. I mean, frankly, after the season, anything you do has to be better in terms of consistency, in terms of a message, in terms of cohesion than what they've gone through thus far. And you're talking about taking over a playoff team with an established veteran quarterback. So certainly if I'm Jim Harbaugh and I'm given my choice of jobs, I'd probably stay in Michigan and swan it and take the money, to be honest with you. But if I'm dying to get back in the NFL, the Raiders job certainly looks attractive.
Well, everybody is saying today that the attractive piece around the Bears job is obviously the fact that they'll get a young quarterback, Justin Fields, but as Michael loves a bit of Aslan, so how can I protect you in this crazy world? If they don't protect him in the offensive line, which has been in a complete mess this year, how are they ever going to resolve the issue? Because no matter who played a quarterback for the Bears this year, they've struggled because the offensive line has been so bad.
I have got you've talked about Aslan, you've talked about crazy world. Dolores, God rest her. All my life, changing every day in every single way. One thing that isn't changing, and one thing, in my opinion, you can book this right now, Mr. O'Leary. I think Week 1, 2022. Joe Judge will be standing on that sideline. He's not going anywhere. I think he should. I think it's incredible. And to be fair, we haven't talked about this properly. I think it's incredible that Brian Flores has been sacked today. Vic Fangio as well. And Joe Judge is still on that Giants. Have they used the social media to try and get people's opinions? Because they don't really need it at this point. Jay Anderson from ESPN said she reckons he's staying.
No, I think he will be gone. But I think what they've done is if you read through the statement in which they've released as part of Gettleman being retired, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, he's gone. The statement reads that the new GM will have full responsibility, including coaching decisions. So I think they've dodged the bullet. They've left it to the new GM to come in. And I think they're not thinking clever there, because what will happen is there'll be a GM process. He'll get hired, and then by then the candidates for head coaching roles will be filled up, and then he might just have no choice but to run with Joe Judge for I think they bailed on it. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
No. We lost you there. You went in and out.
No. I was just going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was just saying Michael's invoking the Cranberries there. And unfortunately, the Giants situation from the outside looking in looks like it's the same old theme since 1916. It's in your head, zombie. So it's going to be a zombie year if Judge is still there. But
I think the GM will come in and Judge will stay for one more year. A wee bit like Peyton came in, Fangio is still there, albeit it wasn't as bad a situation. I suppose if that does happen, it's a disgrace.
Well, I think that might lead to who gets the role, because a first-time GM, and I had this conversation with Colin last week around George Payton. He came in as a first-time GM, and he said, right, I'll run it back for 12 months with your current coach, but after 12 months, I'm making the decision if it's not right. And I think maybe that, like, the guys have been there's already 6 guys interviewing this week. The Chiefs guys coming in, the Titans guys coming in. Like there's Buffalo's assistant GMs coming in. So someone from the outside's coming in, and they might be thankful of that opportunity to become a GM and might say, right, we'll run it back for 12 months. Then I make the call. I still don't think that'll be the case. I think he'll want his own guy.
It's not a day for Dave Gettleman. Obviously, an executive Super Bowl champion with the 3-time world champion Denver Broncos, and I wish him very well in the future.
He also was GM and he took the Panthers to Super Bowl and played against the Broncos.
He did indeed.
Look, he's some of his draft selection and his strategy around free agency was a miss, and it's put the team back in a precarious situation.
But look, guys, I mean, one of the things, I mean, whether it's the Giants game or role or the Chicago piece, like there's a lot of said about from a football perspective, is it the most attractive? And you said it, Michael, they've absolutely 100% got to fix the offensive line, or Brian said it. If you don't do that, it's pointless. But if you get it right in that type of media market, you're a god forevermore. Like, I mean, the thing is, what still attracts about Chicago is like you could be you would be the second coming of Christ. Jeez, I'm going to go to hell, aren't I, at the moment? But it would be the most amazing recovery. I mean, look at how the White Sox and the Cubs, when they eventually turned around, get lauded Ozzie Gillen there from the baseball side. But if you turn around the Bears, there's a reason Ditka still gets up. The 85 Bears still get invoked so often. It's not only because it was an amazing defense, an amazing team. It's because they've had very little by way of success ever since. Disclaimer, Rex Grossman and the 2006 Super Bowl don't really count in that regard. But they've been so starved that any coach going in there and providing that spark of magic, any quarterback going in there and providing that spark of magic will be lauded and hoisted upon people's shoulders and carried and never have to touch the ground with their feet ever again. Or something like that.
This is the beauty of the NFL. There's teams in the playoffs this year that weren't there last year. They had really poor seasons last year, and then within 12 months they're back in the playoffs. So there's going to be a team who will get a new coach this year and be right back where they think they should be come this time next year.
50% of the teams in the playoffs this year weren't there last year. I mean, the competition committee did their job, parity across the league, and yeah, when you consider the Cards, the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Raiders, the Patriots, the Eagles, and the 49ers didn't participate a year ago, and all have a ticket to the dance, which begins next weekend. It'll be quite interesting, and honestly, you could look at that and obviously there are the division winners who aren't there, but yeah, the Packers are probably favorites, but any of those teams could go on a run when you consider that somehow Nick Foles and the Eagles won a Super Bowl, and all things are possible.
Yeah,
it is.
Maybe it'll be the Raiders. Maybe Michael. Maybe they'll go out and win.
Not anymore. They done the Mayo in the bus with the priest last night. They are cursed forevermore. The tweets whenever that happened. Whoever tweeted that last night, you are the GOAT, and you've ruined my pick for the weekend already. Raiders Bengals on Saturday. Patriots Bills early Sunday morning, Mark. Philly, Bucky. 49ers, America's team. Steelers, Chiefs in Big Ben's potentially final hurrah. And the let's win a few games, lose a few games, and stumble over the line Cardinals going up against, here comes the money, LA Rams. I think you can suggest by my current state that I am exhausted. That's all for this show tonight. I want to thank everyone for joining in. Thank you, lads, for the crack. It's been a good laugh. And Friday night, us four, Jeffrey Reinbold, maybe somebody else, maybe a GM, maybe Joe Judge will be gone by then. We'll see the crack. But for now, take care. God bless. Good night.
Hey,